Hello parents, this is my second message for you. Completely optional, no obligation obviously to watch anything. You can just stop now and go and do something else. But I am hoping that there will be something of interest and something to help you and your family as I talk through a series of parenting books. So I'll be referencing a different book each week, and I'll also be telling you what some other parents have told me, so you'll be getting advice from different families. Last week I was talking about an American book by Bryan Caplan called Selfish Reasons to Have More Children. That was a very data-led book, and the message last week was really around finding a U-shaped solution, so a way through this crisis that suits your individual family. Not worrying about what somebody else may or may not be doing during the lockdown, and not worrying too much about the details, just showering your child with love and engagement and warmth. So that was last week's message, and this week I'm going to be talking about another parenting book, Calmer, Easier, Happier Parenting by Noel Janice Norton. I love this book. I've recommended it to lots of people, and if you're only ever going to read one parenting book, it's the one that I would recommend. Now, Noel talks in the book, Calmer, Easier, Happier Parenting, about cooperation. And cooperation being the habit that we want all of our children to develop. And what do we want for our children? We want them to be happy, we want them to be confident. Maybe there are particular skills that we want them to develop. Cooperation is the gateway to these lovely things. It's defined in the book as doing what a trusted adult asks 90% of the time. So not 100% of the time. We're not going to turn our children into robots who obey our every command. That's not desirable. It's not. But 90% of the time sounds pretty good, right? So, this is what Noel says. As your children become more skilled, more self-reliant, and more cooperative, life at home will be much more pleasant. And as your children become more able and more willing to do things for themselves, you'll find yourself doing less and less for them, so you'll have more time to call your own. And you'll experience the satisfaction and confidence that comes from knowing that your children are actively learning the skills, habits, and values that are important to you. So how do we achieve this utopian vision of family harmony? Through a strategy called descriptive praise. Descriptive praise. Very simply, that is noticing and then specifically describing what your child has done that pleases you. So your child does something, you like it, you describe it. You can leave out any exaggeration, any superlatives, they're not necessary. I'll give you some examples in a moment. Now, we all know that praise feels nicer than criticism, and we all know that we should praise our children. The jury's out on how often and what kind of ratio we should have between praise and guidance. There are times when you have to say, no, not like that. Okay, do it differently. That's necessary. Some scientists say the ratio should be about 1 to 3. So for every correction you make to your child, then you should praise them in 3 different ways. Find 3 positives. But some other scientists will say, actually, it's more like 1 to 10. That's the ratio. I'd say it depends on your individual child. If your child is more sensitive, then actually you might be looking towards that 1 to 10 ratio. How do we usually praise our children? Well, often we'll use exaggerated words like brilliant, amazing, wonderful. Your child may draw a picture. Oh, your picture's amazing. It may be amazing. It's quite possibly not. We often praise our children for an ability that they have that is beyond their control. So, oh gosh, you're so clever. Or we praise them for a final result that they might not be able to replicate. A lot of research in education is saying what we should do is look for the details, describe them and praise them. And they're going to be far more about the process rather than the final result. So going back to that picture, you could pick out the details. I love how you use the two different shades of orange together in the sunset. When you drew the bench, you were careful to get all the legs just the right length. I can see that you spent a long time working on the tree. The leaves look so neat. Or you had to keep on going over and over, drawing that hill. I can see where you've rubbed it out and tried again. You must have really persevered with that. Descriptive praise is hard to argue with. If your child draws something or they've done some maths work and they say, it's rubbish, and you say, no, it's not, well, that's going to go south fairly soon, isn't it? Or they've done a piece of writing and they're huffing and puffing about it. If you come along and say, it's great, they're not really going to believe you, even though you're being nice and you're trying to praise them. Look for the details. Describe what it is that you like about what they've done. You'll find things that you don't like. You can come to them as a correction later. But there'll be something, if you look carefully, just for a matter of seconds, you'll be able to find something that you like, even if it's you started all of your letters on the line. I spoke to 3 parents yesterday about descriptive praise in the lockdown. The first one I spoke to said that she uses this to motivate her daughter to get started with learning. She looks for any tiny sign of movement in the right direction and then describes it. So this is things like, oh, you already put your t-shirt on. You're getting ready for the day. Recently, this daughter, let's call her Jane, recently she corrected a sum by herself. So she'd been doing some of her maths learning at home. When she'd finished, she went back and made a correction. And so her mum was able to say, you're checking your answers. That's a good strategy for maths. She didn't say, oh, your maths is wonderful. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. What matters is that this girl was developing the right strategy for success in her schoolwork. Her mum's noticed it. Everyone feels good. Another parent mentioned using descriptive praise when their children wait. Now that may be hard at the moment because there are lots of demands on your time, I'm sure. And children aren't always very good at waiting. It's something that this family decided was important to them. So they've praised them particularly for, thank you, you were standing still. You stopped talking because you could see I was finishing my phone call. You weren't tapping my arm for a moment then, even if they were tapping your arm before and it was really, really annoying. One more parent, let me see. Oh yes, so the third parent decided to write down some descriptive praise. Similar to what we do in schools, she noticed what her children had done over the week and made a mini certificate to present to them on Friday. So that may be something you want to do. So as a family, choose what you want to see more of and make a list. Whether that's concentration in work, you want some more focus, whether that's getting started first thing in the morning and no one's dragging their heels. Maybe you just want some more polite conversations. Make a list of what it is that you want to see. And that will be up to you. It's not up to me. It's up to you what your family values are, how you want your children to grow and develop. When you've got your list, descriptively praise when you see any signs of the items on it. And sometimes we forget to do this, and that's all right. You can come back to it later in the day. When you're sitting down for dinner and your children are there and they're a captive audience, that's when you can mention all the things that they did during the day that are on your list. When it's bath time, or maybe at bedtime, when you're tucking them in and you're reading the story, that's when you can say, just thinking about today and I'm remembering how nicely you sat at the table when it was time to do your writing. What you can also do with descriptive praise is you can ignore the things that didn't work so well, save them for another day. So perhaps your child was sitting nicely on their chair, but they were daydreaming. You could pick out the things that they were doing correctly. You're holding your pencil ready to go. You've got your pencil case in front of you. You're sitting quietly, even if they are daydreaming. And these things are going to make them feel better about themselves and hopefully will get them back on track. The only warning I'd give you about this is don't descriptively praise a child for something that they achieved a long time ago. It's a bit embarrassing and it could be a bit patronising as well for some of the older children. So use it carefully. You know your child best. You know what to highlight. You may be sceptical. That's absolutely fine. This seems really unnatural at first. What's great about it is that you don't have to believe in it for it to work, and you don't necessarily have to be 100% sincere about it either. You don't have to feel appreciative and you don't have to feel calm. You just have to act it. Pick out your descriptive praise and use it. So one of the things that we're working on in my family is having good table manners. And I'll be really biting my tongue, almost literally, to ignore the lapses in table manners, because if you think of the things we want our children to do, to be neat eater, using knife and fork correctly, maybe taking the right portion size when they're putting food in their mouth, chewing with their mouth closed, waiting to speak until they've finished eating, elbows off the table, feet down, engaging in polite conversation. It's a long road, isn't it? From that toddler in a high chair to that teenager that you can be proud of with good table manners. So I will often turn a blind eye to some of my son's lapses there and pick out the things that he's doing well. And it's not always easy to do, but I hope that we're on the right path. So thank you if you're one of the parents who gave me some information today about how you use descriptive praise. If you're more interested in this, then go ahead and read the book that I've been referencing. Next week, I'll be talking about French Children Don't Throw Food by Pamela Druckerman. That's a book about an American who moved to Paris and was interested in the French system of raising children. So I'll be talking to you about structure, framework and rules. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, tune in and I'll see you next Sunday.